Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of the Last Night's Game podcast, Wednesday Wisdom. I'm your host, Amy Butchon-Siegfried, and joined by my brother, co-founder, and co-host, Scott. Scott, welcome to the podcast where we're going to talk all about the state of women's sports. It's definitely the place to be. And of course, no better time to cover it than March, which is Women's History Month.
Thank you for having me on once again. And this is, a topic that's become so popular these days, and women's sports is kind of the place to be now. And we're celebrating the history of women in sports, women in history, but then they've done so much to lay the groundwork for these women in sports, and we're going to celebrate them as well. So there's a lot to unpack here.
Absolutely. And I think part of what really appealed to me in talking about this is, yes, it's Women's History Month, but this is history in women's sports. We're living that right now. And we have women like Sue Bird and Lisa Leslie and Billie Jean King and the Williams sisters. Insert the thousands of athletes that have come before the people we're going to talk about today. Mm-hmm. But we're living that history. We're seeing this growth. People are investing. We were talking before our call, Michelle Kang, who is an owner of the Washington Spirit, which is an NWSL team, along with a couple other women's sports teams. She donated $30 million for the programming of U.S. soccer to make it what it is for women in sports. And so you're looking at, that's just one person's donation. We have private equity groups investing. There's so much happening that this is such a great investment in the way things are going. So I wanted to talk a little bit about it. And of course, let's kind of start off just a little bit. Let's talk about eyeballs. Let's talk a little bit about the growth of what we've seen over the past year or so in women's sports.
And especially in March, as we celebrate Women's History Month, March has been massive for women's sports, especially women's college basketball, which we have seen rise exponentially over the past few years. It's even overtaken the popularity of men's college basketball, March Madness, in terms of viewership. So that's kind of, been one of the things at the forefront that has been skyrocketing the popularity, just women's college basketball in general. Of course, we had Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, and they moved on to the WNBA, but we have new stars coming up, and I think the viewership will only continue to rise because of the big names that are coming up. Last year, I think the women's championship outdrew the men's by like 3 million viewers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely.
I mean, the numbers don't lie. So people are tuning into view because they know the players more on the women's side than the men's.
Absolutely. And I mean, it was an 89% increase of viewership from the 2023 championship game. And really cool. And we could just, I guess we'll cover this now, but women are going to get paid now to participate in March Madness. The teams are going to get paid starting in this season. A combined $15 million will be awarded to teams, which makes up about 26% of the women's media revenue deal. So that's a big deal, and it will increase as it goes along. But mm-hmm. I was reading some articles about it, and when this was voted on not that long ago, the people who voted broke out in applause after this was approved. And so it's really neat to see that we're recognizing the value. And now I'm going to say this is probably not the value of what the men's teams are making, mm-hmm. but it's a step in the right direction, and we continue to see them out earn and out eyeball the men's tournament, and that will continue to happen.
And it's just a few years ago, they couldn't even use the term March Madness.
Right.
So that we've come so far in just a short amount of time. Now they can even say March Madness with the women. So it's only going to continue to rise. We talk about this all the time. The WNBA's draft rules really helped all this. It helps help these women build their brands, build their names, because they have to stay in school these 3 to 4 years. So, so we have stars like Juju Watkins, only a sophomore, and Paige Beckers, who's been around for a while, and she's had some injuries, but she's back, and she's in Connecticut setting records, breaking Diana Taurasi's records, and she's only going to continue to rise.
Yeah, it's really neat to see. And I mean, I feel like we're in a stage in a couple different sports, tennis being one of them, but we're seeing sort of the changing of the guard, right? We're seeing big names like Sue Bird and Alex Morgan and Megan Rapinoe, Simone Biles, Serena Williams. They're all getting ready to hang up their cleats, their basketball shoes. Diana Taurasi and Brittany Griner are probably not far off either from the WNBA. Mm-hmm. And so we're sort of seeing this changing of the guard of these women are now taking a platform to raise the visibility, raise the awareness, for women's sports. And you're seeing names like Mallory Swanson, Caitlin Clark, Trinity Rodman all step in to those big shoes and usher forward the next generation of this.
They're taking the torch from, like you said, this older generation that had to endure a lot. They went through a lot of things as far as flying on, regular Southwest flights to get to games, connecting multiple times, to now these WNBA players, they have chartered flights, they have so much that the previous generation worked for, and they're taking it and they're running with it. They're not content. That list of names that is coming up, we could go on for 20 minutes of each names that people would know and are noteworthy, and they're running with what the previous generation has done to make it even bigger than it already is.
Well, and you look at things like Megan Rapinoe, right? We had the U.S. and Alex Morgan. We had the U.S. women's national team fight for a much more equitable agreement as the men's team. And you're looking at some of this, and these fights have then led into things like the women getting paid for March Madness. If someone just sat by and didn't fight for it, then the NCAA would be perfectly happy taking that $15 million and putting it in their pocket versus giving it to the schools. But yet here we are. So it's really cool to see the full circle of some of the work that these women have done. And one I was thinking of in particular, we were just not long ago with Dr. Jen Welter, who was the first female coach in the NFL. And now we have 15 full-time female coaches on the sidelines this last NFL season, which is up 25% from 2021. And so it's the most number of female coaches we've had in the league. And so it's really cool to see that the efforts and the sacrifices that one person has made is really, truly coming to fruition in a reasonably short period of time, and may it continue to escalate because we're having leagues roll out. We're having all these things happen so quickly.
Yeah, the amount of time that's passed it's light speed in the past few years, right? Like, we know Jen Welter was a trailblazer back when she didn't know a woman had ever been in the NFL. And I think, we've been around her. You see that guys don't care that she's a female or a woman. If you can coach, you can coach. If you can do your job, you can help them win. They don't care. Right. And if you can relate to them, it doesn't matter if you're man, woman, dog, parrot. Like, they'll respect you. And these women have gained the respect of these top, phenomenal athletes. And I think the groundwork is there for more.
Yeah, the stat I saw, which it was awesome. Almost 1/3 of the 32 teams in the NFL have at least one female coach. And, I talk about it a lot about it on the podcast is, we grew up watching men's sports because that was all that was provided to us unless you were playing it. And my son has grown up watching women's sports. We watch more WNBA than we do NBA. We watch more women's college basketball. We watch more women's sports than we do men's besides football. And so it's really neat to see how his mindset is so different when it comes to this. And so this may be an antiquated podcast from his perspective because he doesn't know any different. Granted, he's 6, and so he doesn't listen to podcasts. But, here we are.
Yeah. How many times has he ever asked you to watch a Lakers game, but he'll ask you to watch the Aces, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
He wants to know when the Aces are playing, which is so wild to think about.
Right. It's incredible. And the few basketball games that he's been to have been women's games. His first basketball game was a WNBA game. And so it's really neat to see that. And so, one of the things we'll talk about, we're watching these women's leagues expand, right? We have new leagues coming on board, but then we're having leagues like the NWSL, National Women's Soccer League, who signed this huge media deal, $240 million over 4 years. And we're seeing them expand. We're seeing them grow, and household names are there and in the Olympics.
And then that stems from generations of not only young girls, but even young boys watching the U.S. women's national team go out and win World Cups, win Olympic gold medals. And all that work has led up to this point where they're getting these massive TV deals and salaries where they don't have to work another job. Like, they can strictly focus on soccer or basketball or softball or volleyball.
Yeah, it's neat. And I should let everyone know who's not familiar with the podcast that you are one of the biggest Aces fans there is, which is is Las Vegas's WNBA team. And so these aren't just young girls attending these games, and these aren't just moms. These are families going to these games. And some of those reasons are, they're maybe a little more affordable than, going to a Lakers game.
Yeah.
But the talent on the court,
Hmm.
the actual basketball that I'm watching when I'm watching the WNBA is notable. I think I texted you when I went to my first game, and I don't get to a lot of live basketball games. And I was like, game is fast, it's furious, it's aggressive, but it's great basketball. And the WNBA is also expanding.
Yeah, they're expanding as well. And just to circle back to that, like if I had, a son growing up, or if I was coaching a young boys basketball team, I would tell them to watch the WNBA and don't even watch the NBA, because the product on the court is so much better, technically, fundamentally, teamwork wise. It's so much better than watching an NBA game. No offense, but I think a lot of NBA, like Charles Barkley, would probably say the same thing. Like, I would rather have them watch a WNBA game.
Right. Well, there's some theories that the NBA ratings are actually down this year, and there's theories that that's because they're all just going for a 3-point shot, and sort of
Basically.
it's not strategic. It's not the basketball that you like to see,
Mhm.
and so it's interesting.
Yeah, and then they're expanding this year. We have the Golden State Valkyries coming on board, and they'll be playing at stadium where the Golden State Warriors play. And there's been huge investments into them and their facilities, and they're making not just into the players, but into their health and mental health, as far as facilities go, with workout rooms and trainers and mental coaches, things like that. And we have Boston coming up. Oh, sorry, I apologize. We have Toronto coming up. We have Cleveland coming up in the WNBA. So it's expanding, and these cities are excited for it.
Yeah, and then you've got like things like Unrivaled, right? Then you're talking about how that allows them to go play in the off season
Yes.
in America versus having to travel overseas, like we saw with Brittany Griner and some of the challenges that she encountered, and teammates, right? Having to go to Russia and other countries to make
Yes.
money, to make ends meet, where you're looking at Unrivaled, which was started by two WNBA players. And I'm going to screw up the numbers, but I just remember reading this recently that there was a one-on-one game and the winner made more
Hmm.
in that one-on-one game that she played as sort of like an exhibition or whatever than she did her whole WNBA salary.
Correct. Yeah. And for one night, I think she's the one that founded the league, so it also paid off for her.
Well, found that right, but and it's like the person who came in second made 50 grand, which
Yeah.
was basically 3/4 of what she makes in a regular season for the WNBA. So I look forward to seeing that continue to grow, because they've had last year was their highest attendance in 26 years, highest TV audience in 24 years. So maybe there's an opportunity at some point that this will, be NBA owners, which the WNBA obviously falls under the NBA. Well, maybe can we stop complaining about the WNBA and be excited that one of our leagues is growing,
Yes.
and things happening.
Yeah, and they're on the verge of a new CBA. So I know that based on the momentum they have, the numbers will increase, minimum salaries will increase, maximum salaries will increase. So it's a pivotal time actually for this league that they get this new CBA at this moment, which is perfect for, I think the players have all the leverage. So we'll see how these negotiations go.
Yeah. Well, and like a league like Unrivaled that says, hey, we
Yeah,
can
exactly.
do what we can make money and do a shorter season, do less, and you want us to do more for less money. So we've got this now.
Yeah, so they have all the leverage at this moment. So I'm sure the owners and the league's probably a little nervous at this point.
Well, I want to be mindful of our timing, and we have the hard part is we have so much to talk about
Yes.
in this. I guess let's talk a little PWHL, Professional Women's Hockey League. It's a league that launched last year. It has teams in New York, Boston, Montreal, Minnesota, Ottawa, and Toronto. And they have killed it in attendance records. They've set 6 women's hockey attendance records, a world record for attendance at a women's professional hockey league or hockey game. They have seen a 2,000% increase in their YouTube subscribers. I mean, there are people tuning in from 88 different countries. The league itself has just it's been so fun to watch.
And you have sold out arenas in these cities. I mean, they strategically picked these cities, obviously, because they're huge hockey bases, in Canada and the Northeast, but the fans have embraced it completely. They're selling out. I think multiple teams have had to move where they play because they start out in smaller arenas and now they have to adjust and go to a big arena just to fit capacity and demand. And I'm sure, they will expand at some point, but obviously you have to start with a strong base and get some money and I know they have some big backers behind that. I know Billie Jean King is a major
Hmm.
backer in that. Some of the Dodgers owners, there's a lot of money behind them as well. Like we saw the success of the men's tournament, the Four Nations tournament. That's only going to lead to more excitement to the women playing right now as well.
Absolutely.
And
Well, that's
and we just had the
good.
people like fights, people like violence. Sometimes we just had the first ever fight in the PWHL. I mean, that people will tune in to see that now.
I did not see this. I'm going to have to go back and YouTube this to see how this fares. But, I mean, that's what sometimes people show
Yeah,
up hockey for that.
that's why people watch hockey. So, I mean, they're taking it to the next level, and that will continue to grow as well. We'll get new cities, new fan bases.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about, we were talking about investing.
Mhm.
We already talked about Michelle King and her pledge of $30 million to girls and women's programs for U.S. soccer. But I've been seeing all these articles and, where I read my news in the business world of private equity firms are making deals in women's
Mhm.
sports. Their venture capitalists are spending money on this sector, and entrepreneurs are launching new women's sports businesses. This is not something that is, people are seeing this as the gold rush, if you will.
Mhm.
Let's go ahead, let's jump in, let's dive in, let's invest. And you're seeing that happen across the leagues, across just generic women in sports in general.
Yeah, you said this is the gold rush. These men's franchises are so ridiculously priced that all these very smart, rich people are seeing that this is the way to go to make money. It's only rising. There's been so many people backing it, like but Patrick Mahomes backs the KC Current, Alexis Ohana, and Serena's husband has been massive in all these women's sports with soccer, and he's an investor as well. And he's been on the forefront of fighting for it, obviously
Yeah.
because his wife and his daughter, who's an investor.
That's right. Yeah, and you're like I said, you're seeing individuals, you're seeing VC firms, and it's women's professional sports were projected to generate over about $1 billion in revenue for the first time in 2024, and it's a 300% increase from 2020. So think about that. If you invested your dollar,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a betting person, right, you invested your dollar in 2020 into women's sports, it's a 300% increase.
It's a good
So
ROI, very high.
it's an excellent ROI. And so we're looking at some of these leagues. Obviously they're investing in current leagues and teams, but then they're investing in leagues that are starting up. We saw the Professional Volleyball League, a
Mm-hmm.
Pro Volleyball Federation start this year. We're looking for the Athletes Unlimited Softball League, which is professional softball. That launches in June of 2025. Kim Ng, who was the former general manager of the Miami Marlins Major League Baseball team, is running some of this and getting them off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
The big name, they had a draft recently, and they drafted a big name for this.
Probably the most athletic person in her family, Maya Brady, Tom's niece. She went to UCLA, played softball there. She was drafted into the league, so at least they have some big names. And it's good to see that, if you have a softball player, previously they really didn't have many options after college. So maybe participation dropped off in softball, but if you have some place to go to play after college and make money, that's only going to increase that sport, right? Like volleyball didn't necessarily have anywhere to go. So now they have the professional volleyball league. So that will continue growth in that sport as well. So
Right.
it's what it takes.
And a few leagues before, National Fast Pitch,
Mm-hmm.
Women's Professional Soccer, Softball League, both of those folded. And so to have something that these athletes and Athletes Unlimited is a platform that has has women's volleyball, women's
Mm-hmm.
basketball, and now softball. And so you have that whole conglomerate too that is supporting the world of women's sports. And, you said volleyball, just made me think
Yes.
of the Nebraska game where they sold out the Nebraska football stadium for a volleyball game. What was it, like 92,000 people showed up for this volleyball game in Nebraska?
Yes, absolutely. Demand is definitely there. And you have to strategically pick your spots, obviously, where the fan bases are rabid for sports. And I know Omaha has a big contingent in the Pro Volleyball Federation.
Yep. Well, and that's how we'll wrap this by
Yes.
saying that, if you're not on the bandwagon yet, you need to get here.
Mm-hmm.
It's well worth it. You're going to see great sports. You're going to see some phenomenal athletes, and you're going to have something really cool to talk about and be that, if you're not in it already, be that trendsetter and dive in and learn the stories of these incredible women who are out here doing what they're doing. And from the business side, people investing in what they're doing. And so no matter what hat you wear, there's some great conversation starters around women's sports and in the world of sports. And that's what we're here for. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.